All right, good. Hello, everyone. Happy evening. Yeah, I'm going to just show you a little bit of a change to the website in case anybody goes looking for some of my audios and you can't find them. Let me share the screen. So this is the website. Once upon a time, when you looked under AT audios, you would have found Regina. If you look there now, she's missing. That's because she's right here. You don't have to look far. You just have to look one over. You can tell I have quite a few things on the menu, so it just seemed easier to move me over a little bit. I told Jacqueline it's a good thing I'm retiring soon because the menu is getting quite full. Another thing I want to show you is some of you are familiar with the classic audios where you used to go to the oldies and classics. That is not here. I've changed it to the early teachings and classics. And if you go to the early teachings and classics, you'll actually find two things. One is snippets from the early teachings, and that will take you directly to the YouTube playlist for all of the different little snippets that I'm making now from the early teachings. I'm actually working on one right now. Just before Akalesh, I posted part 1, and tonight, probably before I go to bed tonight, I'll post the other parts. So that's there. The other thing that is then there on this page is the original oldies and classics in full. And this is the page that some of you are already used to seeing, right? So you're accustomed to seeing this page if you like to go and listen to those audios. But I just want to let you know that it's now under the Regina Audios menu, early teachings and classics. Also just wanted to point out underneath the retreats menu, there's a retreat coming up. It's an online retreat, March 11 to 13. This is going to be facilitated by Jackie Walden, but it is a retreat that I wrote. It's called Resolving for Truth. And the purpose of this retreat is, again, to help you get in touch with your spiritual aspiration, and then to go the next step and look and see what the obstacles to your spiritual aspiration might be, and maybe some goals you can set. Usually spiritual practices is what we're talking about with goals that might help you to transcend those obstacles. One more thing I wanted to say, and Sina, make sure you're listening to this. I have decided not to commit to being here next week. And here's why. My daughter is moving next Sunday, and I'm assisting in the move. And it just seems like, you know, if I have to say, but I got to be there by 5, I got to be home by 5, like that might be too much pressure. So I think I need to let next week go and say I won't be here next week. That way I can just focus on the move and the flow. And if the family wants to eat after the move, I can do that, right? I just can just do whatever we need to do to be a part of that move next Sunday. She's moving from Longmont to Colorado Springs. So I won't be here next week. I'll be here the week after. My hands are glowing. Imagine the sun's going down. It's coming in the window. If my face starts glowing, I'll have to move. Sometimes I disappear. But you know, what's really exciting is just a few weeks ago when I started teaching, it was dark outside here. And now it's not. So that's a lot of fun. All right. Last week, I was just about to go into showing you something and then looked at that dang clock and we were out of time. That seems to happen so quickly with this hour. So I am going to bring us back to that. But first, I have a question that somebody sent me that's very specific to something they heard me say last week, and they want clarity on that. So I will answer that first. She says, I heard you say the right mind itself is the 4th principle. And probably the more correct way to say that is, just to be real clear, is that all manifestations are 4th principle. And the right mind, as we typically talk about the right mind, are things like right-minded thoughts, right-minded perceptions, right? All thoughts, all perceptions are part of the 4th principle. So in that way, the right mind does belong in the 4th principle. So she says, I heard you say the right mind itself is 4th principle, but it has its foundation in the 2nd principle. And then later on, you said the right mind is in the dream, but has its foundation outside the dream. She's also pointing out that I had said that really the second principle of God is the last output. My mouth doesn't want to say this. The second principle of God is the last output post. My God, that was hard. The last outpost of illusion. And actually, those are Nisargadatta's words, outpost. So she says this leads to the conclusion that the second principle is outside of the dream. But earlier on, you stated the second principle to be the last stage in the dream, and only the first one not to be in the dream. So this is a mere language thing. Language is such a problem. It is true that the second principle of God is still within the illusion, still within the dream. But typically, when people refer to the dream, they're referring to the world, right? They're referring to the fourth principle of God. So typically, when I use the word dream, I am also referring to the fourth principle of God. So it's just a use of typical language, right? So another way to state this is, again, that the right mind, because it's thoughts and perceptions, it is a part of the fourth principle. In that way, it's a part of the dream, but it does have its roots in the second principle being closer to truth, right? It's often referred to as a reflection of truth, right? So it has its foundation in the second principle, which is closer to truth. When you go up to the first principle, you're beyond the right mind completely, because you're beyond mind completely. All right. And I know all this stuff is if it's new to you, it's a lot of mumbo jumbo, but it's the kind of thing that will settle in over time. Let me peek at my calendar real quick. And the reason I want to peek at my calendar is I wrote down in my calendar the exact question that I was just beginning to address. And I want to find those words. Okay, so this was about predestination. The person says something about, I thought I wrote down the exact question. I didn't. Here's what I wrote down. You are predestined to be what you are because you already are that. Manifestation is not predestined, it is constantly created. And then I had a note about the Big Bang story. So apparently the question was about predestiny. In a way, being predestined is a symbol. And it's an okay symbol. There's nothing wrong with it, but like everything else, it's a symbol. You aren't really predestined to awakening, because in a reality, that part of your mind already is awake. So it's like it's already there. You could say enlightenment already exists within you. Gosh, did I bring my little, I should have got this out earlier. I need to start making notes about all the little props and stuff that I need for this particular teaching. I'm more used to just showing up. I don't know if I have my little guy made out of silly putty. I do, yay. Okay, so let me show it to you this way. Oh, it's a little messed up. It got melted, so. But let me show it to you this way. It looks like the person has been absorbed in consciousness, the way it got a little messed up. But as you guys remember, the way I had this before. Okay. This isn't as perfect as it was, but it'll do. So, and again, this is just a symbol too. But, I have my little, this person represents both person and world. This, I've told you, I call attention. We're also going to call it pretty soon the creative principle, but I call it attention. And this is consciousness. Okay. You never were this. You always have been this, even within the dream, right? This is what you are. So to say you're predestined to be this is kind of silly, because you already are this. You see what I mean? So where predestiny actually is right here, where it's just a symbol, because it's already little t truth. Second second principle of God, I'm going to call little t truth, because it's truer than the idea that you're the person. It's truer. The person and the entire world, some people imagine it as a script that has been fully written and that every little action is already predetermined. And that is just not what inner wisdom has ever told me. And this takes us to the third principle of God. The third principle of God is the creative principle. And I guess that's what we'll talk about tonight. And we'll see how long this talk lasts about the third principle. But the third principle of God is the creative principle. And the third principle of God is in action now. This is where I was going to play you a video, and then Simon reminded me I only had 2 minutes left, and I had to log in as somebody else to access the video anyway, so I skipped it. But tonight I have it all queued up. So this video is about an experience I had when I experienced what scientists call the Big Bang. So let me just share this video with you, and then we'll come back and see what questions you have or what else I have to say. Hi, in case you don't know me, my name is Regina Dawn Akers, and the code and zero code is zero code are messages that I scribed as a student of spirituality. It's what the inner wisdom taught me. What I want to share now is an experience that I had. It's not really a vision. I would call it a vision if it was a vision, but it wasn't a vision. It felt like an actual experience that is an experience way beyond the types of experiences that we have every day. It's probably safe to call it a mystical experience. In this experience, I experienced what we frequently call the Big Bang. The difference is what we're taught about the Big Bang is that it happened billions of years ago, and it was the beginning of our universe, as if our universe is something real and has continued in time since that point, billions of years ago. What I experienced was that the Big Bang is still happening. And that's what's really important. I experienced the Big Bang is happening. I won't be able to move my hand fast enough. So imagine my hand times 1,000, like this, bam, 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 bam. Constantly, the Big Bang is happening, so that the things around us, such as my phone, appear constant. But in reality, the entire universe, including this person, is coming and going, thousands of times per second. And each one of those nanoseconds when the universe appears is a completely new universe. I mean, the universe literally dies and is reborn, dies and is reborn, dies and is reborn thousands of times per second. It kind of reminds me in the Bible when Jesus said something like, with the faith of a mustard seed, you could move mountains. I think people often take that quote to be symbolic, but I'm not sure it was symbolic. I think Jesus was aware of what I am sharing now. He knew that the reason everything appears as it is in each of these nanosecond universes is because we believe the world is real. We believe that is over there and that is over there, and we don't question that they aren't permanently there, or at least semi-permanently there. And so in each universe, they show up in the same place. but there's no real reason for it. This is what Jesus was saying. There's no real reason for it. In the code, you learned about how these universes come into being. As consciousness focuses on ideas, which includes the world and the universe that we perceive, thoughts that come into the mind, emotions that are felt in the body. As consciousness believes all of this, it goes into the realm of potentiality. And when all of the conditions are right, that potentiality comes forth in the current nano universe. So in this way, there's no constancy to time. Time is an illusion. You've probably heard that before. Instead, there's just this nano now in time. And it is what it is. It is as it is because of all of the believing that has happened before. So what does this matter? I'll tell you what it mattered to me when I had the experience. I realized at that time I was looking at grievances with different people. And I realized that if I had a grievance against someone, maybe they did something to me or said something to me, and maybe even everyone would agree that, it made sense that I had a grievance. But if I carry that grievance with me, I'm carrying it into multiple universes. It's causing me pain because I'm a part of consciousness and I'm a part of the total creation. It's somehow painting the current universe, even in ways that I don't know about. It's kind of like dragging your trash from a prior universe into the current universe. And it just doesn't need to be. So what the message of zero code is trying to tell us is all of these egoic things that we believe. Guilt is mentioned specifically, unworthiness, I am not safe, or fear, attack, defense, blame, possession and jealousy, envy, loss. It's hard to sit here and just think of all of the different egoic things: anger, hatred, prejudice, bias, all of this egoic stuff is zero code. It's not real. And the reason it keeps showing up in our universe, even though every little universe is a completely fresh universe, and it could be anything at all, with the faith of a mustard seed, you could move mountains. It could be anything at all. The reason all these things, sickness, death, just the reason all these things, suffering, all these things, starvation, the reason all these things keep showing up in each new universe is because we keep believing it. We, consciousness. And so what zero code is telling us is we don't need to believe it because it's false. It doesn't need to be in the next nano universe. We could drop it because that universe is over. That universe where a certain thing happened, that universe where we experienced a certain thing is over. And we can also drop it. And if we drop it, we don't bring it into the new universe with us. So zero code is zero code. It's not real. It doesn't need to be held on to. It doesn't need to be brought into the next universe. It certainly gave me a lot to think about. It made it a lot easier for me to drop, for example, grievances that I had against people, because I could see I didn't want to drag that into the new universe with me. Maybe this happened. Maybe this person said that to me, or maybe this person did that to me, but that was universes ago. It's zero code. It's not real. I don't need to bring it into this one and this one and this one and this one. I can let it go and have a different experience now. It's been nice chatting with you. I hope you're enjoying your retreat. Bye. So that's a video that I made for the Embodied Truth Retreat, which I think is coming up in April. And will be facilitated by Anne Blanchard. So, the point is, oh, and John says the predestination question was about how was it this could happen if we are all one? Well, that's exactly how it happens. That's what the code just talked about. So again, this little thing here is a symbol, but let me use this little symbol because it's a wonderful symbol. At least I think it is. It's one that Holy Spirit gave to me early. It's so early in my journal, it's ridiculous. And so it's been with me for a long time. So again, this is pure consciousness. This is the second principle of God. This is form, manifestation, the world, person. That's the fourth principle of God. The third principle of God, or the creative principle, is right here. It's right here. And this is what I said. I think it's okay to call this attention. That's an okay word. And remember, we did that exercise several weeks ago where I had you pay attention to your head, pay attention to your feet, pay attention. So you know attention can be moved. You know it. You did it yourselves, right? So the way the creative principle works, attention, as you can tell, is still made up of consciousness, right? Consciousness has life in it. So what happens when we give attention to something, we in effect give life to it. So for example, if I'm mad at my neighbor for mowing the lawn at 6 a.m. when I'm trying to sleep, I'm in my mind attacking my neighbor for being so, I can't even think of words anymore, careless, not inconsiderate, right? Whatever I might be attacking my neighbor for in my mind. What's happening is I'm not a person. I think I'm a person, but I'm not. I'm consciousness. And at this level, I'm really this part of consciousness, the moving part of consciousness. I'm the creative principle. And so when I'm given attention to these attack energy thoughts in my mind about how inconsiderate my neighbor is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I am literally giving life to an attack energy. And that energy gets used in a couple of different ways. One is it's immediately manifest in my experience. I mean, if you're angry at someone and you're attacking them in your mind, your peace goes out the window in that moment, right? You're immediately having these emotional experiences. But in addition to that, it goes out, I fondly call it into the database of God. It goes out into the universe, where it collects with other energies and it paints other pictures in the universe. It shows up in other ways. Like I always like to say, Hitler was a great big giant collection of energy, of all of us thinking we're better than somebody else. And every one of us have done that. There's a human that's ever lived that hasn't thought they were better than someone, right? Every one of us. So all of that got collected and showed up in Hitler. And that's where that manifestation came from. Another example I used to use when they were more in the news was ISIS. ISIS was a great big collection of, we're right, our ideology is right, yours is wrong. How many of us have had that thought, right? Yeah, every one of us, right? Every one of us have had that thought. I remember my dad used to say, if everybody thought like me, this world would be perfect. Well, Isis thought the same thing. Right? Same thought. Same thought. So, so what happens then is, as we are giving attention, again, thinking we're people, but we're not. Thinking we're people, but we're not. And as we're giving attention to different energies, we are creating the appearance that is coming through these nano universes. And so there is no destiny there, because where we're placing our attention now, and by the time I say now, it's probably happened, 25, 30 times. I mean, so fast. But where I'm placing my attention now is literally creating the next now. Or where we are placing our attention now is literally creating the next now. So creation is happening. That type of creation is happening all of the time. All of the time. And so the future in that way is not, the future in manifestation is not predestined. But we together as one are creating it. It is the oneness of the third principle of God that is creating it. So let me pause and see what questions we have, because to me, this is simple stuff. I've known it for so long, and I know it's not as simple for all of you. So maybe it is simple for you. Oh, there we go. Daniel. Hi. I know who you are. Go ahead, talk.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So by focusing our attention on this, on these beliefs or grievances, we're creating, but is it creation without, is it more like an experience versus?
Yes, yeah.
It's experience, but not really creation.
Yeah, I don't bother with the language of A Course in Miracles anymore. I haven't read it in about 10 years, so you'll have to forgive my words. But yes, what it's quote creating is the fourth principle of God, which is the realm of experience.
Okay.
Experience and appearance, right? And not permanent, because we're constantly creating it.
Yeah.
And I think A Course in Miracles would call it making.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. And let's see, Seth.
There you go. Sorry. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Melissa. Seth is my son.
Okay, and I thought Seth was a funny name for a girl, but you never know.
Yeah. No, whenever I turn my computer on, it all goes direct. He's the default. So whatever. Okay. So Melissa, sorry. Okay. So basically, if I just want everything to be peaceful, I'm going around my day, and parts of my day, I'm like, I forget. And I like made a judgment the other day. I was at Costco and I'm like, or whatever. Somebody was arguing about wearing their mask, and I've already had COVID, and I'm like, can't you just be nice? And right. And then I caught myself, I'm like, she looked at me like, I can't wear one. I'm like, that's fine. Just be nice to the rest of us, And then I walked away and I'm like, oh, you just created more shit. Thank you very much. And then, right, just move on and call it good, right?
Yes, drop it as soon as possible.
And just try the best I can to love each other, or whatever. I don't know.
The
The more I love, the less of.
Yes, that's the advantage of the nano universe knowledge. Like it happened, you got upset. Okay, you can drop it now, because as soon as it happened, it's over, right? So you don't have to carry it with you. I mean, that's what I thought was really important about seeing that. There's no reason. That universe is dead and gone, and that energy is, you can just let it go immediately. The sooner you can sincerely let something go, the better.
Right. It's a mistake, not a life sentence. That's my new motto.
Yes.
Love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You in.
So is this the same term, except you might, I don't know, I just have the notes about your previous teaching on the divine law. When you say a manifest life plus some type of utterance or idea, then it's something of manifestation. Is this kind of what you describe as a creative principle, same as divine law?
Yeah, I think you might be referring to my teaching on John chapter 1 in the Bible, it sounds like. And yeah, that's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. I've taught this in many different ways with many different languages, many different symbols, but it's all the same teaching. And yeah, you could call it divine law. It's what the third principle of God does. You know, we haven't talked about the second principle of God yet, but the second principle of God is actually a manifestation, although compared to the world, it's unmanifest. So it's kind of funny. It's all comparative, right? But it's the manifestation of subject. It's the manifestation of what some people call the I am presence. It's subject. And so, but it's a pure subject. It doesn't show up in physical form or anything. But once this subject was created, you could say the next natural evolution was a process to create objects that the subject could pay attention to, right? A subject needs an object. And so the creative process is that process. And it's literally just the process of giving, I call it believing attention to. That's it. And this is why learning to let go of thoughts, of beliefs, of attachments, of fears, of everything is so important. Because when you hold on, you're continuing that energy in other universes. You're bringing it in for additional creations. You know, like one thing that, you know, I've been asked many, many times, it's so funny, especially when I teach it, which I won't be doing anymore as far as I know. But when I teach at large conferences, you know, like there's 400 people in the audience or something, somebody always invariably stands up when I'm teaching this kind of thing and says, yeah, but what about, you know, those people who abuse puppies? Like, you know, I have a right to judge them because, I mean, my God, you know, judge, you know, abusing puppies, abusing small children, you know, there's could be nothing worse than that, right? They're so innocent. But what we don't understand is when we jump into our righteous judgment like that, we're still jumping into that energy and we're creating the very thing that we don't want to see in the world. You know, we are consciousness, not people, giving attention to the very thing that I'm saying I don't want in the world. It actually doesn't make sense, which this is why I think in the Course, Jesus says we are insane, right? We're insane. So we're creating the very appearances we say we're fighting against by continuing to give them believing attention. Cindy.
I always love when I seem to raise my hand and then I find out what I'm going to ask. So that's what happened. And I think it's just to clarify two things that I think I've heard relative to this teaching, if not now. Then one is that my job is not to believe that my direct focus is what's creating my experience, right? Because it's everything creates everything.
Well, it's actually both. And I'm not teaching the code tonight, you know, but it's actually both. And here's why. Remember I said earlier that if my neighbor is mowing the lawn at 6 a.m. and I'm upset about that because I wanted to sleep at 6 a.m. Of course, my neighbor just wanted to avoid the heat because it's going to get hot at 7 in my story, right? But if my neighbor is mowing the lawn at 6 a.m. and I'm getting upset, I said it does two things. The first thing it does is affects my immediate experience. I'm not at peace. I'm not happy. I'm angry. I'm seeing my neighbor as an obstacle to my peace. So yes, it's affecting my perception. Right then, that's right that moment. There's no way that you can be angry at your neighbor and be at peace at the same time. So it immediately, the very first effect is the effect that I experience. And the second thing it does is it goes out and collects with similar energies. This is where the we comes in, or the whole, right? And creates appearances.
But chances are it won't get your neighbor to start mowing at 8 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock.
Well,
Or you don't know.
my humble opinion, which actually I only got from guidance, this is what I have always been taught from within. You should never, to benefit you, right? This is what I mean by should, not you're guilty if you do, but to benefit you and your awakening, you should never want anybody to do anything differently than they are.
The second thing that I wanted to say out loud in the way I'm experiencing this now is that where I sit and what I'm holding on to emotionally or thoughts is going out into the universe. My understanding as an NTI student, everything else, that my desire isn't to replace what I'm holding with holding something that's a little bit more positive, right? My ultimate desire, I almost said should, but would be to empty and let truth flow through instead, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, and this goes where the best teaching of this comes from the Tao Te Ching. This is where I use the pendulum, right? Because if I am trying to replace something that I judge as bad, by the way, ISIS might think it's good. That might be what they want. But anyway, I judge it as bad, right? If I'm trying to replace something I judge as bad with something that I judge as good, eventually that pendulum swings back in the opposite direction anyway. I mean, that's still duality. So it's the emptiness. It's the emptiness. That is the goal. This is what Akalash was teaching before, in the hour before when he was teaching surrender. And in fact, it's amazing because some of you know I'm going through my early teachings right now and making these little snippets. But it's really interesting for me to listen to them because I have forgotten almost all of them. The number of times that I am told to rest, to do nothing, to let go is amazing. Listen to those words: rest, do nothing, let go. They're all pointing towards the emptiness, towards the space. None of them are saying, think this instead of that. Not once, right? Rest, let go, do nothing. I happen to be reading Bernadette Roberts right now, and the word she uses is passivity. Be passive in the heart, or passive in the stillness. That's just the way she's wording the exact same thing. So you're right. We're not trying to replace what we judge as good over what we judge as bad. That's still playing the game. That's still duality, and you'll get its opposite as well. We are attempting emptiness. We're moving towards emptiness.
So I was inspired to pull out my copy of the Golden Key essay from way back when, and I think this is teaching the same thing, right? So I have a lot of, not nearly as much, but when I have worry thoughts come up about my children, I've been attempting to just look at them and say, nah, zero code or golden key. And then I either, go to one of the quotes I'm contemplating. I do my best to just focus on a truth statement. And that's this teaching specifically, right?
Yes. And that's exactly what I was taught to do from within. I didn't have a word for that until I studied Buddhism years later, but I got a word for that from Thich Nhat Hanh. He calls it selective touching, which is a funny term. But you remember now, you're touching with your attention. You're choosing what you want to touch with your attention rather than letting your programming just determine what you're going to touch with your attention unconsciously. So it's selective touching. You're choosing to touch, your thought for the day or whatever, and keep your attention with that and let the other thoughts go.
Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. All right, Shauna.
Thank you, Regina, for reviewing your experience of the Big Bang. What I got from that this time was when I let go of the grievances and don't carry my trash into this moment. That can be seen fresh and clean as it is. And I just sense the freedom in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was a time when, of course, all this was hard for me. And again, I'm listening to that when I listen to these audios. So it's just a lot of fun to hear how my mind used to be. But if I was to get upset at you, Shauna, here's literally what would happen to me now. I would immediately catch myself. I would immediately surrender it. And then honestly, genuinely, I would forget. And a week later, you might say something like, remember last week and you got upset with me? I'm like, what? I mean, literally, what? And after you remind me, there's a 50-50 chance I'll remember it. There's a 50-50 chance I still won't, because that's how forgotten it becomes. It's put out and it's literally not even a part of this universe. So I'm not walking around carrying it in my head, thinking about it, not thinking about how good I did in letting go of it. I'm not thinking about it at all. It's, oops, caught myself, let it go, move on. New universe.
Thank you for being a model for me.
You're welcome. You're welcome, sweetie. Who else would like to say something? Andy Walker.
Hi, Regina, can you, so you've given an example in the past where Peace Pilgrim was in the situation where she saw this young lady and there was some guy who was about to abuse this young girl or something like that.
Yes.
And she didn't just stop and let go. She intervened, right? She took action. She didn't just remain neutral in that circumstance.
Yeah.
Can you help me understand?
Yeah.
that?
Well, I would say the part of the answer to that, Andy, is I think Peace Pilgrim was already enlightened. So she probably never had any, there was probably no self-will struggle going on within her, where there might be with another person. And you have to figure out, what's self-will and what goes self-will. She was already moving from the emptiness. And that's another part of the Tao teaching, is that once you become the emptiness, then, we call it often the right mind, right? Then the right mind can move you and use you, right? And so she already was the emptiness, right? So she was just being moved by the universe, and the universe moved her into that situation. And she didn't say anything to the guy. She just looked at him and loved him. You'll remember. Yeah. So that's my answer to that. The universe does correct things. And this is where, as spiritual students, we have to be extremely honest. And this, I will say, my observation has been, it's very hard for people to be extremely honest. So I say that just so you can pay more attention to yourself. This is where we have to be extremely honest. When we are doing something from self-will, right? Even if it appears to be something good, we're participating in judgment. And we're giving attention. We're giving attention to, like if I try and stop war, how can I try and stop war without giving attention to war? How can I stop racism without giving attention to racism? How can I improve women's rights without giving attention to the fact that women don't have rights? You see what I mean? So when we do things from self-will, what we don't understand is we're being a part of the problem. We're part of the energy that we're trying to correct. So whenever we experience ourselves wanting to do something from self-will, our job is to let it go. That's our job. Let it go, let it go, let it go. But at the same time, when we are emptiness, and this is where you got to be friggin' honest. When you're emptiness, your body could be put in a place to do something to correct a situation. But that didn't come from you, right? That didn't come from you. My teaching doesn't even come from me. If I came here and taught because I thought, you guys needed it, then I would be a part of the problem. I come here and teach just because that's what I'm moved to do and for no other reason. And I walk away from it and I don't give it another thought. And in fact, I have to work very, very hard to remember anything that I said the week before. Because it's not coming from self-will. It's just my current job in the universe. That's all, right? That's all. It's nothing else. So as you become empty, the emptiness will use you, but that's different than you thinking something because you think it should be done. There's a big difference. I love one of the things Peace Pilgrim said is she said that she had decided to become a part of the solution instead of a part of the problem. And to her, the solution was abiding as inner peace, which is the same as the emptiness of the Tao. All right, Melissa, Seth's mom.
Sorry. And I'm substitute teaching right now too. So I guess my statement to this is like, so like because I often, and I know for sure it was definitely as a self-righteous thing, like in the past, but I took a kind of a 2-year hiatus from working in the classroom with kids because I just had a really hard time with not having support in administration. And since I've gone back the last couple weeks ago, I realized, because I've been studying the Course in Miracles and listening to you for a year. Thank you so much. But I realized so when I'm in the classroom, I still get upset or I like things still bother me and I can tell, but I'm like, oh, and I can catch it a lot faster.
Yeah.
But I'm a teacher and I'm there. And so student is doing something that it's really harmful to another student. That's so I go and I say, okay, that's not okay. So just go to another class. But I mean, my involvement there, I'm hoping that's pretty accurate, appropriate and neutral, right?
Yes. When you have a job to do, you have a job to do. That is a part of it. And it's about doing it from that neutrality. I mean, I think we all know, again, if we're really paying attention, we know when there's something we have to do, right? Whether that's, counseling an employee, disciplining a child, when you have to do it. And you also know if you're trying to avoid it, right? Right. But the thing is, you play your role from peace. You play your role from neutrality, right? But yeah, we all have roles to play.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. So let me open up my little Word document. Like I said, I need to start making a list of how I want to be prepared before I come here. I'm not used to bringing so many things with me. Let's see, it's in the 500 days folder. All right, and let me share my screen again. Whoops, I did that wrong. I was trying to share a video. I got to go back to basic. Okay, here we are. So this is the 4 principles of God again. So what we've talked about then is the 4th principle of God. We spent 2 weeks talking about that. And the 4th principle of God we know is manifestation, also called dream or illusion. We know it includes persons, world, universe, thought, emotion, images, afterlife experiences, paranormal, anything manifest in any way, right? Everything manifests. And like we said before, almost every word in the dictionary points to the 4th principle of God. Okay. Now what we're talking about is the 3rd principle of God, which is the creative process. And one of the things, the 3rd principle of God is typically called mind. I said I like to call it attention. I think attention is a little more clear. I think the word mind is more confusing for people. But if you look up the word mind in the dictionary, one of the definitions of the word mind is attention. Right? So that's what this mind is talking about. It's not talking about thought in a human mind, because that would be 4th principle of God. This is just talking about the casting of attention. And when you cast attention, the interesting thing is you feel like a person. It's the experience of a person. It's the experience of a person giving attention to this, but you aren't a person. So regardless of the experience, it's the third principle of God. And what happened for me in my process of awakening is the very first thing that I was woken up to was that I was not a person. I was the creative process. And in fact, you'll find that NTI refers to that a lot. So I don't know exactly how many years I was spent at this level. Probably, I probably entered this level around 2006. Up until that, I just thought I was a person. So I would say 2006, that's when I was reading NTI Ephesians, is when I understood the teaching of the creative process and realized that's what I am. And so began casting my attention very carefully, very differently. By the way, that's how you know that you actually have had a realization or an insight. With intellectual knowledge, you may understand it. You might be able to describe it, but it hasn't changed your way of being, right? When you find your way of being as a result, then that was an insight or a shift or an awakening. All those words could mean the same thing. An actual change of how you are and how you be occurs. So for me, that happened in 2006. And I think it was around 2009 when I began to awaken to the second principle of God. So we're talking, I spent about 3 years really deepening in the realization of myself as the creative process. And at that time, I thought that was the top. I didn't know these two existed yet, you see. So I thought that's what we are. We are the creative process. That's the truth of what we are. And I think other people experience this too, as they awaken through different levels of awakening. They'll awaken, they'll have a shift, and they'll think, oh, this is the truth, right? This is it. This is the truth, until they have another shift. And then they go, oh, no, this is the truth. So what happens is, I mean, when you only know yourself in a world and you know nothing else, you think that's the truth, right? And so then when you awaken or shift up to the creative process, you think that's the truth. So in that way, the experience of truth is changing during the process of awakening. And of course, ultimate truth doesn't occur, as far as we know, until the first principle of God. And if there's something beyond that, I'm unaware of it, and everyone that I've ever read is also unaware of it. But I will tell you, I am of the same mind as Bernadette Roberts. I read her say this the other day, and I was like, yay! She says we should not limit God to even this, right? And I agree with her on that. So this is just all that is known by me at this time, and also known by anybody I've ever read. No further. Most people aren't even aware of the first principle. The second principle is the most they're aware of. Certainly there are people, the third principle is the most they're aware of. And as you know, there are billions of people. The fourth principle is the most they're aware of. So you can see how awareness is actually increasing. And the feeling of where you are always feels like the truth. And that's why sometimes teachings can be confusing, because some people will say, the third principle, of course, they don't use that language, that's my language, but they'll say the creative process is the truth. That's just as far as they've realized so far. And some people will say the consciousness or the pure consciousness or the I am presence is the truth. That's just as far as they've realized so far. You see? And then of course, the first principle, that's the most that, as far as I'm aware of, that humans have ever been aware of as truth. So we call that the capital T truth. If there's something beyond that, I don't know of any human that's ever become aware of it. Okay, so we only have like 2 minutes left. Again, I won't be here next week. That'll give you guys time to you know what you could do if you wanted to. You guys raise your hands if you want to do this. What you could do if you want to next week is you guys could show up and you guys could talk about me behind my back. You could talk about what I've shared so far, what you think that means. You guys could discover together where your clarity is and where your questions are, and then use that to get me started the following week if you want to. So how many of you all would like to show up and just kind of have a discussion amongst yourselves? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of people. Okay, now everybody put your hands down, because now I need to know who wants to facilitate that. Who wants to play facilitator? Let's see, I'm not seeing anybody. Oh, wait, I do, Cindy. Okay, I see Cindy. So Cindy, you will be the facilitator next week. So Cindy, one thing you'll do as facilitator, of course, you'll call on people, right? So everybody's not talking at once, right? You'll call on people to share whatever they want to share. But also when as a group, you guys say, oh, that's something we should ask Regina, you write it down and send it to me, okay? That's your job as facilitator. So you guys show up, you talk about what I've taught so far in clarifying the teachings. We're about a month, about 5 or 6 weeks into it. So I've done some talking. See where your questions are, and then we can use those to get me started. I do still have, I dropped it on the floor. I do still have questions. It's not like I've covered all the questions people have given me. And so maybe what we'll do is take a couple weeks just to answer questions before we move on. All right. Okay, super. It's nice seeing you guys. Bye.